Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger passing away at his home in Connecticut yesterday. He was 100 years old. But here's how Rolling Stone is reporting the news. Quote, the notorious war criminal was 100. Measuring purely by confirmed kills, the worst mass murderer ever executed by the United States was the white supremacist terrorist Timothy McVeigh. McVeigh, who in his own psychotic way thought he was saving America, never remotely killed on the scale of Kissinger.
Unbelievable. Tudor Dixon is the host of the Tudor Dixon podcast, and she joins us now. Tudor, good morning to you. What's your reaction to this sort of characterization on the day Henry Kissinger died?
It's sad that the state of America is that we're not surprised by this, because if you didn't have activist journalists, would you have journalists at all today? This is the state of American journalism, and it is so sad. They will blame Republicans for all of the discourse in America, but it really comes down to the fact that on this day, after October 7th, Rolling Stone is willing to come out with an article that is purely anti-Semitic for a Jewish man who served this country incredibly well for his entire life.
They also went on to say Kissinger might not have been motivated by hatred of communism. I think that's incorrect. But he was a reactionary who empowered and enabled the sort of reactionaries for whom anti-communism was a respectable channel for America's racist and exploitative socioeconomic traditions. Every good far-left article, Tudor, has to call America racist, right? Your thoughts on that quote?
Of course, and this is a man who went back and fought for America against his home country that was performing atrocities the world had never seen before. And yet this is what we get from Rolling Stone. They should be ashamed of themselves. I would love to see them come out and say, we made a mistake in printing this. I highly doubt that would ever happen.
Yeah. Well, there was also news on the Hunter Biden front that we want to get to. And there's an email that was released by the Oversight Committee, and it talks about a money laundering investigator who looked into Hunter Biden's finances, and this conclusion is what he came to. We find it unusual that approximately 58% of the funds were transferred to the law firm in a few months, and the frequency of payments appear erratic. Here's Congressman James Comer and Jim Jordan on China's influence over the Biden family.
This is the way that China bought influence. This is the way that China compromised politicians. They would send money to compromised family members of big politicians to try to gain influence.
The most important line in this internal bank document is the line that says China is targeting children of politicians. China may have saw an easy target or a big target and taken this action that they did.
So what do you think about that and where all of this is going?
I agree with Jim Jordan. When I saw that, I thought, how do we not know? How is this not a bigger story that China is targeting the children of politicians to come and infiltrate this country? And I think when you look at the Hunter Biden situation, what a sad situation. This is a man who, if any of us have family members or know someone who's been addicted to drugs, was vulnerable. And yet the government of the United States allowed this to continue, knowing this was going on, knowing that this was someone who probably couldn't handle the pressures as it was, but also knowing that this is happening to other family members of politicians. What is going on with the national security in this country? And can Joe Biden handle this? Obviously not.
Tudor, my second most important line of this, to follow up on Jim Comer or Jim Jordan saying his first one, is the line that says the following: these payments did not appear to correspond to any services rendered. That, to me, is really the crux of all this. All these foreign entities, especially China, paid Hunter Biden a lot of money, and to do what?
Right, exactly. Again, we have to talk about the fact that his history was very storied. He had quite a history with drugs, with alcohol, with prostitutes. This was certainly not a man who, at that point in his life, was capable of providing anything from a business standpoint. Sad as that is, he really wasn't in that position. And to have somebody who, let me tell you, this is not from the Oversight Committee. This is something the Oversight Committee found. So these are people outside of the Republicans that came and said, look, this is a really serious situation. At the time, I believe he had been vice president. This was 2018, I think, that this came out. So this is before this all started this investigation started. They said this is a situation where one of the most powerful men in the country, his son has been compromised. We need to be aware of this. And yet Democrats are still sweeping this under the rug. If I were the Democrats or the Republicans right now, I would be saying, who are the other family members? What other politicians have had this experience? Because clearly we know that other politicians' children have been targets. Who are they and where are they now? And what happened? We need to get down to the bottom of this. And the fact that we're just sweeping this under the rug and everybody's like, oh, whatever, it's just the Republicans investigating. We should all be very concerned about the national security of our country right now.
Well, there's still that big controversy over whether he's going to testify publicly or privately, but it looks like he will be talking pretty soon. There's also this that we want to get to. Confidence in the U.S. presidency hit its lowest point, according to the Reagan National Defense Survey. 47% say they don't have confidence in the presidency, compared to 36% of Americans saying they do have a great deal or some confidence. This could also correspond with confidence in the country and approval rating overall in the state of things in the United States. What do you think about this, and how do we make it better?
We get a new president. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Laura Ingraham had a whole segment last night just on Biden's gaffes from the day. This is a constant situation now where we have the president saying things like, oh, my Marines can they have the nuclear codes, they can blow up another country. Wait a minute, what is happening? Of course people are concerned. Look, when you have a situation where the White House tree falls and everybody goes, I mean, why wouldn't it fall? That's the situation we are in this country right now. Nobody has confidence in even the ability to put up the White House Christmas tree.
That is terrifying. Tudor Dixon, we thank you very much for your insight on all these topics. Fox and Friends begins now.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.